Segment 2, Chad Brown joins us, Chad Q. Brown, and this is, I have to say this every time, one of my favorite shows, because my problem is you can't, I think when you interview guys, you got to listen. You can't just, you got to listen to you and not just follow what somebody's saying, so that you can actually ask good feedback or follow-up questions. Sometimes I listen too much and get caught up, but I will work hard not to do that. Chad, thanks for taking the time. You are not, as we interview, not in the Lafayette area. You're on the road, but we appreciate your time so much.
I love doing this, Alan. You know that. I appreciate you having me.
I know you don't have anything better to do with your time, but let's talk. Well, obviously, I always ask, this is the first question on the elevator speech on profile behavior. Of course, Chad, the CEO of profilebehavior.com since 2013. You're hearing his name if you're paying attention. If you pay attention to us, we've had him on about twice a year throughout the last 2 or 3 years, because it's always compelling. But you're also hearing more if you listen to what Matt Painterr talks about. You listen occasionally what Barry Odom talks about. You hear this name pop up, Chad Brown. This is who he is. But tell us a little bit about, give our readers and listeners that haven't heard your story maybe a little more background of what you're all about.
Thank you, Alan. It's always sometimes difficult to understand what we do. I get that a lot. I'm a consultant to college athletic departments across the country with the niche and the personality assessments. And we're a software and consulting company, and we started 14, 15 years ago. And Matt Painterr was our first client at Purdue. And obviously I'm a Purdue grad, so love doing your show, live in the area. And I travel the country, and we work with the NFL and NBA teams and a lot of college athletic departments now, just helping the recruiting process, the transfer portal, how personality assessments, they help communication. So when people say team building, there's a lot of consultants that are very good at it. We use a lot of data with our software and the tech to just help everybody understand each other better and make better decisions, even maybe grow some self-awareness in there. Some people like that part too. So hopefully that makes sense. But it's been going on in the corporate world for 100 years, but it wasn't as big in college athletics. So we just thought we could start a niche there, and it's been going great.
Yeah, when you look at what you do, and I've taken a couple of your assessments, but how they could evolve even in the last 5 years. You have more, as I understand it, more tests and more things in your arsenal, so to speak. Is that a fair assessment, or is that and that's and how do you continue to have that evolve in this world?
Yeah, no pun intended. But it is. I mean, I always describe Purdue basketball, even though we do football and all kinds of Olympic sports and corporate stuff, like Purdue basketball, and give Matt Painterr credit, was a lab for us early.
Yeah.
Meaning Matt had those 2013, 14 years that weren't his favorite. And Matt Painterr's the reason, and that staff are the reasons they've obviously excelled. But we've been a data point in there that he's just trying to understand and be better with people. So we've learned a lot, and it has evolved. We've gone from just this DISC assessment that 70% of Fortune 500 companies use, but it's so simplified. It's an awesome way to teach people, but you got to have more than just that one. So we have a couple others out there that some people know, the Big Five. Some people know there's different values assessments that show you, do people care about family, learning, helping others? Maybe it's money, things like that show up in our stuff. And that's it's been an evolution, but we've got it really dialed in right now. And it's really, and you got to make it easy for coaches. So that's the other thing, is like, you can't be complicated, because they have to go so fast. So having been a 10-year college football coach years ago, I've been behind those walls, and that helps me talk to the coaches as well.
And you do it, and the tests are really designed. I mean, I know I took it on my phone. It's meant to be, 15 minutes. It's meant to get done, because everybody's pressed for time, and yet you need to get answers. And you want to be able to figure some things out about individuals, certainly. And that's a big bad part of this.
Yeah, speed is everything. No recruit or prospect or somebody in the portal wants to take a long assessment, and some of them are long because they need to be, but ours had to be built for that short time frame, but it had to be powerful too. And we're doing a lot of corporate stuff now too, which is kind of cool. So thank you for asking.
Yeah, Matt Painterr is a good, you Forrest Gumped your way into that. I know you built relationships with Matt, and that's been an important part of that. But that's a Brian Newbert term, by the way.
That's a great one.
But he's a good laboratory. I mean, look at where they were in 13, 14, and a person that was I'm sure you had something to do with the fact that, maybe we need to change some things and change the way we do some things. But as he's continued to develop and grow, and now he's in a whole different realm. I mean, he, as Gene Katie used to say, you're the hunter or they're hunted. They're the hunted, and the odds-on favorite to win the national championship. But no pressure, Matt. Look at what he, where he and his program have evolved, and what makes you. We've seen them deal with pressure, obviously, but what makes you feel this group could be really well suited to deal with what will be a year of being under the microscope again?
Yeah, I mean, they were bottom of the Big Ten in 2013-14, and now they're the preseason #1 team in the country.
Yeah.
That is all Matt Painterr, and he's evolved. A lot of coaches, including me, just executives, we can get into our lives and we're good at our job, and we don't, need to move or grow. Sometimes we don't think we need to because we're good at our job. Yeah. And Matt Painterr is the absolute opposite of that. If you know him at all, he's reading like 3 books at a time, and he's just a learner. But he's definitely evolved. CBS and ESPN, all these people have written written articles about that. Yeah. And that for me has been cool to see. And he's always loved our information there. But he's the evolution a lot of times is. It's not only him, but it's also just the game they're playing. And I don't mean on the court. I mean, when, pre-COVID and post-COVID are 2 different worlds, because post-COVID, 21-22, all right, you get the portal in play. You get NIL in play. You get all these different rules and regulations changing. The NCAA starts getting sued all the time, and it's like everybody's, and it's still going on now. Everybody's complaining there are no rules. Think about that. And I remember as a coach, you had to, as a football coach in 2003, we always had to take a recruiting test. So do you know the rules? And you had to pass the test. It was always a competition with the coaches who would miss the least. But I remember in 2003, I always remember this, our compliance director came down and said, there's about 100 legislation changes in this year's manual. Just make sure you study up. And 100, that was in 2003.
Yeah.
So it's evolved so much all the time. And this year, or the last few years, it's obviously crazy. But to give Matt credit, Jalen Rose picked on him in the news about, well, he better open his pocketbook up. Well, look around. Not everybody's just out in front waving what they're doing in front of the world. He's been amazing to evolve, and so is that staff, and so is Mike Bobinski in that department. On getting the resources needed to keep Zach Edey home. Think about that. I mean, just those kind of things they've done, and they're as competitive as obviously anybody in America.
And Braden Smith and Trey Kaufman-Wren and Fletcher Lawyer, all those guys.
Keep going. Yep.
Matt has talked at length, and obviously it's media day this week in the Big Ten as well. I'm sure he'll address it again about those the big three, and you can tell this. I guess my question, without divulging specifics on these guys, doesn't surprise you. I don't think that this group didn't take other opportunities. They looked at the big picture. It seemed with those three that is their makeup. Is that a fair assessment from how you view it? And
everybody likes money, so but it's not always. This is how I would describe it. We work with some NBA teams, and the NBA folks have told me, they're like, we're watching how these guys. Can they make mature decisions at an early age? Yeah. He's like, we've been talking about that a couple guys in my head that have said that, because they're like, back in the day, it was like, all right, when they get money, when they get to us, how will they deal with it? How will they mature or not mature? But now, one of the executives told me, he's like, we can see it. He's like, we have a prequel to them, getting to us. And so, I'm not saying that's the reason they say, but I know the maturity level and the education that Purdue basketball and the department and Matt provide those kids. It allows them, they're always super transparent. There are some places that are not that transparent. Right. They're probably overly transparent, but I think that builds trust over time. And the kids go, all right, because we're getting paid. If you get paid enough and you're winning, all right, you want to go, to somewhere and learn a whole new system in 1 year just to make another couple $100,000. When you're young, it's like, sure, I do. But when you start to listen to the adults talk, it's like, no, like you got a lot of money right now. Stay here, maximize your ability, and then go. The real money's in the NBA is what I hear Paint and a lot of the college basketball coaches we work with. Obviously, that's what everybody's chasing.
Yeah, no question. And it is a new world in that. And so on the dynamic of this team, and you've obviously watched them as a fan, and hard not to like the makeup of this team. But you bring in a couple new guys, and that are going to be huge parts of what Purdue's going to be about this year with Oscar Clough and Over Mayer. But talk about that dynamic and the role as you see this team from a leadership standpoint. I mean, Braden Smith's a tough as nails guy, but you've got a three-headed monster up there as seniors that can make for an interesting dynamic from a leadership standpoint. And there are three, as I see them, don't have results. They seem to be different personalities. I'm talking Lawyer, Kaufman, Wren, and Smith. They're all different guys.
Yeah. Well, I do a ton of leadership training, and I don't like cliches. So people say leadership and trust and culture and chemistry all the time. Those are cliches, right? If you don't drill into those words, like, you can't help people get better at them. So leadership is tricky because, like, yes, the three, the big three with Trey and Braden and Fletch coming back. Well, even when new people come in the door, they're competitive. They're talented as hell, especially coming to this team. It's not like people walk in the door and be like, all right, I'm just following you because you're great. Yeah. Now, I will say this group does understand that, but getting that to all mesh, whether it's three new faces or I'll go places and it's a brand new team. I'm at one today where it's a new head coach and at University of Miami, new head coach and a whole new team. So it's like, it's tricky on how that works, but I'll go back to the education and the maturity that is taught within the walls of Purdue basketball. A lot of people come in with that mindset of, like, we understand the dynamic. We understand they're called group norms. Norms are like the unwritten rules within an organization that people they're not on the HR manual, right? They're just things that people understand. And everywhere I go, they're a little different. Sometimes they're not always established, but with this group and these new guys, they're awesome about it. And the other thing, I'll flip it. I think Braden, Fletch, and Trey and the guys that are returning, they've done an awesome job accepting them, bringing them in. I do a lot of work with Braden one-on-one, and Braden, and Omer he's driving him around this summer and taking him to Walmart when he needs help. Like, that's leadership stuff, man, because not everybody has to do that. And there's a lot of places that doesn't happen. So that's pretty cool.
Well, and the old dynamic of, and maybe Braden may not be in that case, but even, somebody's going to take your time.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's and like you said, you want to have guys that are competitive in that standpoint. And I think that's where Purdue really has a good match. Now, Barry Odom, obviously in a different situation, trying to build a program, but doing it with a kind of somewhat similar, and this is maybe a little bit of an apples and oranges situation. I know you work with Brad Underwood at Illinois, where he put pretty much whole new teams together. Basketball is different than football, but talk about what you see out of Barry so far. And again, trying to herd the cats and find the right group together. What kind of work have you done with them, and what do you see as in the early part of the season with Purdue football?
Yeah, they've done what I see is different than what we've done. We've done a little bit with them, but in their defense, they've had to go so fast. Football just has this mass number. Well, people will ask us about how do you work with football? It's got to be a lot. I'm like, it's 10 basketball teams. Yeah. So it's like, you have the wide receiver room, the D-line room. And so it's trickier for a head coach to know all those things. But they've been great. They've used it with the quarterbacks and obviously a lot of the new guys. And what I see, though, from Barry Odom is this unbelievably professional, disciplined coach. I said it on the last podcast, and I'll say it again. It's the kind of the ghost of Joe Tiller to me, because I worked with Joe for 3 years and I played for Joe for a year. And so what does that mean? It means it's like discipline within a football program. Man, like, even I don't care if it's today. You hear about like Pete Carroll and some of these guys are the players' coaches. Yeah, but like establishing discipline, establishing this regimen of togetherness, but also kind of like, it can't be too loose. And how do you get people to fall in those lines? That's a part to me that's so impressive.
Yeah.
In my opinion, we're not as talented as we were a year ago, but as far as coaching goes, we're, night and day. We're in games. We're, they have some work to do. And football, needs support more so than basketball, because another good term I heard was the bubble. So think about like a real estate bubble. The the bubble in men's college basketball is busting this year because last year was pre-rev share. They could get, they could go out and raise, $7, $8, $9, $12 million goes to the players. Well, this year rev share is 3 to 4, depending on the school and Power 4. Football's different. They're going to get the majority of that rev share, and it's going to, and they need it, because now you get on an even playing field. Yes, the collectives and all that money does matter, and people are trying to figure out how to do that to gain an advantage. Some people go outside the lines a little bit with that, as if you guys can read between what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But they've done a great job, and I think Barry's done an unbelievable, and their staff, they've done an unbelievable job getting the right kids in there, coaching discipline, being competitive, getting Ryan back. Excuse me. Was a great thing, because the quarterback market is so expensive.
Oh, yeah.
So you're looking for value. He's done a great job. And so, everybody, nobody wants to hear patience, but at Purdue, it just always blows my mind. I tell my kids this, the fans show up no matter what. In Ross-Ade, they show up in Mackey, and it's just cool no matter what happens. And so that will allow Purdue to be successful. It's just one of those departments that just really always has support, even when they're upset, But Barry's done a great job, and I just love we're competitive again.
All right, you look at that word money and what that means, and you've done, and how that is integrated, because obviously when you started this business, there was no direct payments. There might have been some places that were doing indirect ones, But tell me about that, and how that has impacted what you do, and how you not only counsel student athletes, coaches, but what factor? It's a factor, obviously.
Yeah.
How does it impact what you're doing on a daily basis?
Well, excuse me. Everybody wants to take a personality test, like the coaches do. Give it to a prospect. And they want that to be, that guy's going to be an All-American. That guy's going to throw for 300 yards a game. That guy's going to rush for 1,000. That's not what we do.
Yeah.
And I can't say that loud enough to the audience. Do I wish it was a silver bullet? Yeah, sure. Because I'd have a really nice boat, and Alan would be doing this call from, somewhere on the water. Because nobody's figured that out yet. Why do I say it that way? Because with the evolution of college athletics is turning into a business. You're becoming more, it's an absolute culture shift. A market shift is a better term. It's happened a long time ago. Remember when coaches didn't make $1 million a year?
Yeah.
And the agents continued to drive that up back in probably the early 90s and late 90s, early 2000s. You just kept getting more and more. Same things happen here. And so when you look at money, no one, and I'm sticking up for the athletic departments. And if you look at Mike Bobinski's staff, like Ken Halpin or Tim House, those guys, that group, they've got to figure out how to manage the money. They've got to figure out how to, what a salary cap, what's that? They've never been trained in that. That's not their world. And so the evolution of educating themselves, bringing in NFL folks to discuss the cap, bringing in financial advisors for the athletes. It's this fast-paced deal. And so I'm going back to what I started with. Everybody wants the personality assessment to be perfect. What they've used us for is just to know everything, to try and be effective when people can come and go. We want to be effective with you now as much as possible. And so that part's been where our stuff has evolved. And that's been cool to see, because again, Fortune 500 companies, the billions and billions of dollars, they've used tools like this in hiring or just team building, for 100 years. It's been going on forever. But a lot of people in college athletics are using tools that we use, that we provide, to their world. And that's been, when they're paying people a lot of money, the antennas have gone up with the departments of we need to do more, and that's where our stuff's coming.
Does it make you hopeful that this, like anything else, this is a tremendous time of change, not only from a world stage, but certainly in the world of college athletics? Sure. Will the skill set, will the support, will the things that need to be so that these young men and women that play college athletics, participate in college athletics, can end up having a good experience? Are you optimistic about that moving forward? Or what, I guess better question is, what makes you optimistic about that?
I'm optimistic about the Power Four, and I'm optimistic about, let's throw the Big East in there and keep a Power Five real. I'm not optimistic about small colleges. Why? Because I heard Mick Cronin do an interview with Colin Cowherd a while back, and the question was asked to Mick Cronin, and it was about the 4 number 1 seeds in basketball being all the Final Four. And he said, Colin said to Mick, do you think that that'll stay consistent? And Mick Cronin said, he goes, it could. And he goes, you know why? We have their players.
Yeah.
And so think about that answer. Somebody goes to Janai Broom last year at Auburn, who was, he and Braden Smith are battling out for Player of the Year, Cooper Flag. But Janai started at Morehead State.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's, people just don't remember these journeys a lot of these kids go on. So anyway, I think it's going to get better for the Power Four, the Big East, and then I'll throw one more thing in there. We work with South Florida, for example. South Florida just redid their football arena, or so their stadium. They're all in on basketball. They're doing more events to generate money, to drive to the collective. They're being very diverse. Think about a portfolio. So that's a school that isn't an ACC, SEC school, but they're like, no, we're in this thing. And so there are some schools that are going all in, but then some places you go, leadership, athletic directors, or the board or the president isn't pro athletics, even though it might be a big brand. And they're they say the right things, but the financial support isn't there. So those student athletes could have a lesser experience. And that's where the student athletes need to pay attention to that. Because if a school says they're all in, but their actions speak so loudly you can't hear what the department's saying, a quote I've always liked, it's not as good an experience when other places, are providing the resources and going to more of a pro model. So that's my prediction as things evolve right now.
All right, last question. In Purdue's niche in some of this, at least what the Boilermaker program says, Mike Babinski and others, Matt Painterr, about the need. Is that a niche for Purdue? Building that academic, still saying, we really do still care about this, and we expect you to have an academic experience here if you're on campus at Purdue. Does that bode well? Do you think that strategy of, and again, it's different in basketball than football. It's different in men's basketball versus women's basketball, where the programs are. But does that bode well for Purdue in your view?
Yeah, I think it does for the right kid. And that's the thing. When you look at, I'm not trying to get on my high horse with parenting, but a lot of kids, if basketball is the only thing, and that's what's been taught from the early age, they don't think about education as much. Yeah. I'm not picking on anybody, but sometimes the message to the student athlete, male or female, it's no, this is your way to go gain because you've been given a gift. But a lot of parents and a lot of families still preach education, and getting that degree is the thing that they just can't ever take it away from you.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? And going back to do it later is just hard. And so when the message is taught like that, I do think, the kids know it's going to be harder, but they're still going. I know they're still going. Again, I'm actually a guest lecturer for a class at Purdue, and I do a talk with the class, Tech 330, and it's great. But a couple of the basketball players are in that class, and they're, I see them in the class. I'm like, good job, you guys are still going to class. Well done. Yeah. You know what I mean? So they are, and I think education at most places, especially those, the schools of the Big Ten, the ACC, these high academic institutions, it still matters, but it all depends on the family and the student athlete.
All right, Chad. So thank you so much for always good. This could go on for hours. We got Ubers to catch, dental appointments to get to, all kinds of things, but that's a good thing. Chad, have a great, safe in your travels, and Go Frontier Falcons too, and you got a son
right, baby.
involved with that, and we'll look forward to that as well. Look forward to seeing you down the road. Take care.
Big one tonight. Thanks so much, Alan. I always appreciate you. Bye bye.